Good morning. This is the Energy and Carbon Management Commission Wednesday, February 18th meeting. We have a business agenda before us. Let's start with the roll call.
Thank you, Commissioner Ackerman,
Here.
Commissioner Cross,
Here.
Commissioner Mesner,
Here.
Commissioner Oath,
Here.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 commissioners present.
And that is a quorum. Welcome, everyone. We have a short but potent agenda this morning. We're going to hear from the Community Relations Unit. Before we go to that, let's ask if any commissioner has comments. Seeing no comments, we move to consent agenda. Does anyone have questions on consent? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of consent signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. And now we move to the meat of the agenda, the Energy and Carbon Management Community Relations Unit update. Ms. Coe.
Thank you. I'm going to give us a moment to get our slides shared. It looks good on my end. Is it good for everybody else?
It looks great.
Well, that's the success of the day. Thank you, commissioners, for welcoming us and sharing space with us this morning. And also, thank you to the 30 or so folks also in attendance. We really appreciate you taking the time this morning. Most of you are all too familiar with my face, for better or worse, but for the record, I'm Kristen Kemp. I'm the Community Relations Manager here at Energy and Carbon Management Commission, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Community Relation Unit team members Stephen Arauza and Megan Adamczyk. Since our unit is all things comms and all things engagement, we thought we would kick off with showing you how we generally introduce ourselves to the Colorado community. So next slide. I think the audio isn't coming through. Well, I jinxed us by saying that we had successful tech, but next slide, please. That is a short 20-second video of our Community Relations Unit introducing ourselves digitally to the community just to make ourselves a little bit more personable. So we wanted to share that with you. We're here today to provide an update on ECMC's community engagement methodology. It's an interesting time to do it. Right now, obviously, February 2026, which means it's been roughly 14 months since the implementation of the Cumulative Impacts and Enhanced Systems and Practices rulemaking that, of course, went into effect December of 2024. And likewise, correspondingly, it's been roughly 1 year since our Community Relations Unit was formed. And so this feels like an ideal time to provide you all with an update on our work and also sort of a snapshot or preview of what's to come. So as you see on the slide, today, some of us from the Community Relations Unit, we call ourselves the crew for short. We actually have an acronym that works. We will be describing our key performance indicators. So in marketing speak, those are called KPIs, both quantitatively and qualitatively regarding our regulatory work, namely our role in reviewing oil and gas development plans, OGDPs, of course, and our rule-based work, meaning the complaints program, the local government designee program, and then more broadly, our community engagement work that, of course, is rooted in the Environmental Justice Act, as well as our external communication strategies. So our crew, we're a team of scientists as well as social scientists. And of course, we're embedded in an agency of engineers and scientists. So we wanted to be prepared with both quantitative information about our work while also emphasizing the human qualitative components of our work. So next slide, please. I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement to thank you all for adopting the cumulative impact rules back in 2024. And this is the one time I will recite from the slide deck. I know that's not a good practice, but from the statement of basis of purpose, the Commission acknowledges that the overarching goals of outreach to and engagement with disproportionately impacted communities are to build trust and transparency, provide meaningful opportunities to influence public policy, and modify proposed state actions, in response to public input to decrease environmental burdens or increase environmental benefits. And in acknowledging and thanking you for adopting these rules, I also want to acknowledge and thank the hard work of many environmental non-government organizations and community-based organizations and community members at large who advocated for many years preceding the adoption of these cumulative impact rules. ECMC, as you well know as commissioners, has a long history of performing robust stakeholder engagement and inviting and accepting public comment. And I think it's clear that the cumulative impact rulemaking reflects such stakeholdering. So I hope that those listening today or others see that their advocacy preceding the adoption of the cumulative impact rules really reflects that history at ECMC of community involvement and stakeholdering. Today, in many ways, our crew views the cumulative impact rules as getting ECMC in some ways to the starting line in terms of intentional and strategic community engagement best practices rooted in environmental justice. And now we're running a long marathon. Sometimes it feels like we're sprinting, but we're really glad to be part of the race. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Araza.
Thank you, Kristen. And good morning, commissioners and staff and everyone else that's in attendance today. As Kristen mentioned, I am Stephen Arauza. I am the West Slope Environmental Justice Community Liaison. And I always like to start with sort of revisiting the state of Colorado's commitments to environmental justice. As Kristen mentioned, our work is based in the Colorado Environmental Justice Act and the commitments made by the state of Colorado to this effort. So the Environmental Justice Act, here I've got the declarations. This was House Bill 21-1266. We resist the urge, I suppose, to read them all to you directly, but I do like to highlight that second declaration, which simply states that it is necessary for disproportionately impacted communities to be meaningfully engaged as partners and stakeholders in government decision making. These declarations also acknowledge the potential, or that there are potential environmental and climate threats to communities that merit higher levels of engagement, review, and consent. And that really is the motivation that we have for our portion of the cumulative impacts and enhanced systems and practices rulemaking that took effect at the end of 2024. So the work that we do is manifested in the ECMC rules as higher levels of engagement, review, and consent for proposed oil and gas operations. And that's sort of this first portion of the presentation. The Community Relations Unit started our work just under a year ago, where we prioritized drafting and publishing operator guidance in order to ensure compliance with the new community engagement portions of the rules. Since our last update to the Commission, we've been focused on formalizing our internal standard operating procedures, or SOPs, with our colleagues. And the work that we do touches on the OGDP review process, here listed during the pre-application phase, during the completeness review, and during the post-completeness phases of that process. We really appreciate the input of our colleagues, the guidance of the LAS team and the cumulative impacts teams, as well as our colleagues in the strategic QA/QC unit for facilitating those conversations so that we were able to arrive at an internal process that formally elevates the two-way communication that we have with community stakeholders. So this slide presents our statistics. The time frame that we have here um, covers September through December of 2025. So 4 months there, including the holidays. Uh, of course, in addition to the process work I described, we've been focused on delivering a high level of customer service for our stakeholders. So the slide here presents the standardized data on those key performance indicators that Kristen mentioned. And the reason we start in September of 2025 is that's when the KPIs were formally established. So the work that we did began in earnest in March of 2025, and that included much of the same work that's described here as we were developing our process, but we didn't start capturing this type of information in this standard format until September. So that's explains the time frame. And for the sake of consistency, that time frame of September to December 2025 is what we use throughout the rest of this presentation. So walking through this information, you see that we have attended 13 pre-application community meetings. So this is the first phase really in the OGDP review process, where the operators are showing up in communities and seeking input from folks that are anticipated to be directly in proximity to proposed operations. You can see from the asterisk there that 12 out of the 13 of these pre-application community meetings were in the front range during the window. If we extend back to March, we get a few more West Slope pre-app meetings in there, but I think this really speaks to the overall trends that we see in permitting across the state. That statistic also sort of reads true for the number of post-completeness community meetings that are attended. These are meetings that come after the application has been deemed to pass completeness by ECMC staff, and then there's another opportunity for community members to come after having reviewed the published application to express their concerns as well. All three of those meetings during the time frame took place on the Front Range. Stepping back in the process a little bit, we have 20 operator consultation meetings during that time frame. This is a meeting specifically with the community liaison and the operator before the pre-application community meeting is formally established, where we discuss specific needs within the community, perhaps accommodations to consider, and really just generally work with the operator to ensure compliance as early on in the process as we can with these community engagement rules. During that time, we also had one OGDP application actually receive input from our team for the director recommendation. So that is the one application that sort of went all the way through the process during this window. There were 3 OGDPs under review. So these were OGDPs that were approaching the completeness phase. And there were also 3 OGDPs that had passed completeness with a community outreach plan. So those plans were being monitored at that point. So this next slide sort of represents next steps that we have in the regulatory front. Next month, we'll commemorate our first year as a team at the ECMC. And in this time, we've been fortunate to collaborate with our colleagues, of course, in the LAS unit to establish the process for OGDPs. So we're going to continue to develop and streamline that process together. We also intend to continue to provide operator training to ensure compliance with the cumulative impacts rules, or our portions of them. And we can anticipate an almost inevitable increase in the number of OGDPs received as the operator's understanding of the process improves. We also plan to, we're working to establish a process for monitoring ongoing compliance with those community outreach plans as those are received and approved. And we've begun work with our colleagues in the geothermal and Class 6 spaces to develop similar procedures to the work that we've done with the LAS team. So next, I will pass it on to Megan, who will describe the complaints reporting process.
Thanks, Steve. And I'll echo my thanks to the commission and our attendees today for devoting some time to hearing from crew. My name is Megan Adamczyk. I'm ECMC's Community Relations Liaison. And one of my primary responsibilities at ECMC is managing the complaints process. The complaints process was ECMC's kind of original method of community engagement before crew existed. And I'd like to start by touching on the fact that the word complaint kind of has a negative connotation associated with it. The ECMC rules describe our process using the word complaint, but in fact, the process is really the public requesting an investigation of compliance with ECMC's rules to address a concern or observation that they have. ECMC staff welcomes these requests from the public, and we feel that the public contacting us via this process demonstrates that we're actually doing our job of engaging with communities and making our work known. We've maintained our commitment to this process in the last year, both by developing and launching a new complaint intake tool. This tool offers improved user experience and improved digital accessibility. Also, it offers better functionality for our staff, which is always a win. In this moment, I have to give my thanks to our IAT team, especially Jen Brainerd, for accepting a lot of feedback from me and from our staff testers on getting this form just perfect. And we also developed a new dedicated complaints webpage as part of our website relaunch in June of last year. Next slide. So here we have a view of that page. It offers clear and friendly user navigation, and it does provide some resources for issues that our complaints process can't address, for example, health concerns or emergencies. And while you take this in, I'd like to take a quick minute to kind of go over how our complaints process works for those who may not be aware. So the process begins with the submittal of an intake form. Any person in the state of Colorado is welcome to submit a Form 18. Available, you can see it right on the File a Complaint link on the website view. ECMC staff will then conduct a jurisdictional review. And so this determines if complaints are within our scope. If they are not, we provide a referral to outside agencies and communicate that contact information back to the complainant. Complaints that do fall under our authority are then assigned to technical staff based on subject matter and geography. And then this is kind of the meat of the process where the staff will proceed with an investigation. How that investigation looks can vary widely based on the complaint topic. They can include soil, groundwater sampling. They might include an odor investigation, a noise investigation. They may include collaboration with outside agencies, and they may be limited to just a desktop document review. Investigation results will similarly vary widely based on the results of that investigation. Some result in corrective action issued to operators. A subset do result in referrals to enforcement, or in many cases, we find that the subject operation is in compliance with ECMC rules. Final communications are then shared to the complainants to let them know the outcome of the process. Next slide. So this is a quick snapshot of our complaints data. It's in the same time frame that Steve mentioned, from September to December. So we received 57 new complaints and closed 49 complaints. Those top categories of complaints included noise, air quality or odor, lighting, and royalties. The first three of those categories are all investigations that would be completed by our compliance team. They're kind of our most frequent collaborator in the complaints process. And you can see that we have a total rolling number or number for the rolling 12 months of complaints that are open at 70. And this does reflect the fact that, some of our complaints are closed within maybe 24 hours, but then we also have some investigations that range significantly longer, and those would typically include things that involve sampling and analysis or long-term reclamations. Next slide. And what's next for the complaint process? Excitingly, we have recently published a plain language form guidance for our Form 18 and 18A. Those are the forms that address the intake and resolution of complaints. You'll hear more about our plain language guidance in a few minutes. And we continue to encourage the public to file complaints. We will be participating in our informational community meetings. You'll also hear a little bit more about that later, and continue to promote the process. Next slide. Local government engagement is also under my umbrella. And excitingly, right now, we are working to kind of relaunch and revamp our LGD program in the framework of local governments having greater rule authority. The LGD program allows a local government to designate a point person to serve as ECMC's main contact. This is a voluntary program, and we do encourage participation because it makes communication extremely efficient. I also want to take this moment to note that the LGD program is not the only way that ECMC engages with local government. Our staff often coordinate with local governments on specific topics like permitting, spills, and orphan wells. And I also want to flag our colleague Pete Dunleavy, who exists to offer siting assistance to local governments regarding solar, wind, and battery storage. Next slide. So I did mention that this is a rebuilding phase for the local government program. Crew has made really big strides in local government work over the last year. We prepared a local government engagement plan to guide our rebuilding of the program, and I'd like to thank Commissioner Messner and Chair Robbins for lending their expertise in the development of this plan. We are currently working to contact each and every local government designee that we have registered to verify we have quality contact information for them. We've also recently conducted a QA review of existing IGAs and MOUs that ECMC has with local governments. We also relaunched a LGD webpage and added a page for Pete Dunleavy's work in the solar, wind, and battery storage program as a part of our website relaunch. Next slide, please. So here's a quick recap of what the local government designee program looks like. We have a total of 172 registered LGDs. That's made up of 55 counties, 106 municipalities, and 11 special districts. And just for context, Colorado has 64 counties and 273 municipalities. So you can see that quite a good percentage of our local governments in the state do choose to register with us. Next slide. And then what's next in our local gov relaunch? So the beginning of this process has been a large effort, and we still have a long way to go. So we will complete the LGD verification project over the next few weeks. So any LGDs listening, answer our phone calls. Once we're confident in the quality of those contacts and know that our messaging will be landing in the right place, we're really excited to move forward with developing proactive outreach to these LGDs. And this looks like a schedule of routine meetings and an LGD-focused newsletter. Also, as we continue to build regulatory authority with emerging technologies, we're assessing how that LGD program can be expanded to include municipalities that are maybe new to interacting with ECMC. And you'll hear a little more later about the community events that ECMC is attending. But we also anticipate doing some local government outreach that is outside of the local government designee program. And this would look like commissioners and or staff connecting with local elected officials as we are out in the community. I think that's all I have, so I'll hand it back to Steve.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, so moving on, I started my portion with the description of the OGDP process, which requires the operators to engage with the communities by rule. In addition to that required regulatory work, the Community Relations Unit is tasked with improving community engagement at the ECMC. So we began this work, again, as soon as we convened as a team by developing, with input from the agency and from the community, ECMC's first community engagement strategy, which we've discussed in this space previously. That strategy included an assessment of established ECMC community engagement efforts, as well as directive to increase our presence within the community events, and also inviting community members to attend events that we host. You can see some of us in action. We identified the fact that many of the members of the public don't directly engage with our agency unless they're prompted either by a notification of proposed activity in their area or perhaps by incidents otherwise that may call this work to their attention. So by showing up to community events, we have the opportunity to engage directly with members of the public outside of that sort of response, I guess, cycle. With the help of subject matter experts and even a few commissioners, the Community Relations Unit has been able to identify opportunities for ECMC to show up in communities. So we have a few photos here. Commissioner Cross at the Weld County Youth Climate Leadership Summit, and our colleague Jessica Chavez here with her hand up at the 2025 Colorado Rising Youth Unity Rising Summit. And I'd like to give a special shout out to Jessica. Within her first year on the job, she has reported having over 1,000 individual touch points with members of the community. So that really exemplifies this portion of the work that we do. And Jessica is a very experienced leader in that space. The community relations page of the ECMC website does include a link for members to use or for members of the public rather, to request the ECMC attend or participate in local events. This is something that we encourage staff and leadership at the agency to utilize as well, because we want to know what sort of events are going on in the communities, especially if our colleagues think that our presence as an agency might be beneficial. So we encourage folks to check that out. This year, the Community Relations Unit has several exciting ambitions on deck for community engagement. We've been working to establish commission workshops and community impact tours as a way to prioritize more two-way communication between commissioners and community members. We've launched a Dear ECMC section of our new carbon copy newsletter that welcomes questions from the public that are then answered publicly in the newsletter. And we are also evaluating the creation of a disproportionately impacted community advisory board to further inform community engagement in our decision-making. We've launched a program for students and young professionals to request what we call informational interviews of ECMC subject matter experts. And we have exciting projects in the works with CU Boulder and their story mapping lab, and commemorations, of course, for the ECMC's 75th anniversary taking place later this year. I might be a little biased in this one, but I'm especially excited to announce that we are launching informational community meetings next month. These meetings are intended to promote a shared understanding of ECMC data, forms, processes, and decisions for communities. And it's something that's, in our minds, comparable to the operator meetings, but intended for more of a plain language discussion with a public audience. So this is intended to be a monthly community meeting series. Meetings will be hosted online and in the evening in order to accommodate people's working schedules. Director Murphy will join me to kick off the series on March 10th, and I hope that many of the folks on the call are able to attend. After that, the meetings will occur monthly with different ECMC subject matter experts addressing topics that have been requested by community-based organizations and some of the community engagement work that I described previously. And you can find out more about this meeting series at our new website, which is ecmc.colorado.gov/informational-community-meetings. So with that, I will pass it back to Kristen.
Thank you. So this slide should be nothing new to you 5 commissioners. Wanted to highlight public participation at our hearings. So, wow, ECMC hosted 56 public virtual hearings and nearly 14,000 people cumulatively attended. So FYI, I did the math, and if you 5 attended all 56 meetings, which you generally did, you count as like 280 of that 14,000, but still, holy cow. more than weekly public hearings with many folks in attendance. And in addition, ECMC hosted 3 in-person 511 public comment hearings at which over 600 people attended. And I know you 5 are well familiar, but just for, it looks like now the near 70 folks listening in, a little bit of background on Rule 511. So Rule 511 states that community members can request a hearing devoted exclusively to public comment so that the commissioners during their review process and prior to voting on a proposed oil and gas development plan can hear explicitly from community members. And so really glad to have hosted 3 of those in the past year. Next slide, please. I'll be shifting the remainder of this presentation to Crew's work with external communications. So it's been a real blessing that at ECMC, external communications and community engagement fall within our same team. It has really fostered natural efficiencies and effectiveness, especially regarding the promotion of our outreach events and integrating environmental justice and plain language accessibility into our content. So you hopefully aren't yet tired of us tooting our own horns with the website, but it wouldn't be a proper recap of our work from last year if I didn't yet again mention our completely overhauled new website. It spans 220 pages. You heard me say at a presentation in the summer when we launched the site, this site is frankly average, but we're still really quite proud of it. The highlights are really rooted in plain language and community engagement best practices. So totally overhauled the navigation with community in mind as the users, operators second. So that's why you see the totally overhauled site navigation. We also really overhauled the content of all primary pages and secondary pages of the 220-page website to include plain language. And so next slide, please. I think you all know I'm pretty geeky when it comes to digital engagement analytics. The wonderful thing about our new website is that it's Google Analytics enabled. And so now we get to not only see and view the data, but use that data to make informed content decisions. So the data you see on your screen reflects launch date, which is June 16th. That date is like memorialized in my head to today. So a slightly different time frame from the preceding slides, but because the Google Analytics data is so easy to manipulate, this is from June 16th to Sunday night, I think, or Monday. So in that window of time, you see on the screen, we had nearly 1 million views. It would have been really fun at this presentation if we could have met the million mark, but not quite. And that is from 68,000 users. So as you may infer, that means about 68,000 people individually have visited our site for a total of nearly 1 million views. And then generally on average, a person views 14 pages. This is really good stuff. So presuming not most folks listening are, pros at website analytics, having a 3-minute duration is really impressive. So when you think about your own user behavior, like if you're, I don't know, shopping online at Target or reading the Denver Post online or doing whatever you might be doing online, we don't stay very long. And so for our website behavior to demonstrate that folks are staying for over 3 minutes and generally viewing multiple pages is really good. Wanted to also highlight for you all our top performing pages. So of course, the homepage is a top performing page. And it may not come as a surprise that the data-rooted pages related to COGIS are also top performing pages. Also wanted to highlight that the hearings page is a highly popular page with over 15,000 views in the past 7 months. The daily activity dashboard, which I think many of us are familiar with, that's sort of the attempt at plain language of our COGIS database, is also fairly popular with 6,300 views in the last half year. And then the Crew is glad to have had 4,400 views to our news section of the website, but also really hoping to grow that. I wanted to give a few examples of how we can use this data to inform content strategy. It's, kind of creepy how much we can learn and glean and track user behavior. What's not on your screen is we can track the type of device you're using, what time of day you're visiting us. And so, interestingly enough, and I think not surprising, during the holidays between the last 2 weeks of December and the first week of January, we were able to identify that desktop use really declined and mobile, like on your phone, use really increased. And likewise, to correspond with that, after hours, evening time increased and daytime use decreased. And so while I can't say for certain, I can infer that that means operators who are generally, working during the day, who use our website, were on vacation, and community members who engage with our website, not on a desktop, not during the day, were still actively using our site. So just kind of a neat example of how we can delineate user behavior. Next slide, please. So you've heard my colleagues and I talk a lot about plain language content. Plain language content is a really critical component of community engagement and environmental justice best practices. It sounds easy, right? Like speak plainly. It's actually, in my biased opinion, really an interesting and difficult exercise to translate technical, scientific, and engineering speak accurately, but in plain language. And so I mentioned that every primary page of our website and secondary page has now plain language explanations. We've also added a plain language index. So if you're, a random community member and you don't even know what the word is that you're trying to look up, we hope that the index is a helpful place for you to find what you're seeking. It's also really important to us that we encourage two-way communication. So for instance, on this index page, we invite folks to tell us like, hey, did you not find what you're looking for? Tell us and we'll add it to this index. I mentioned that our daily activity dashboard, there's a screenshot of it in the middle of your screen, is an important tool for translating the COGIS database for community members. We had, I think it was 6,400 views to this landing page. And so in response to knowing that community uses the daily activity dashboard, acronym DAD, we added plain language explanation of all of the data provided on the DAD, which was really critical to us because we know for certain based on community input that they were misinterpreting the data. And then on the left of your screen, I guess I went right to left, sorry there. On the left-hand side of your screen is what my colleague, Ms. Adamczyk, just referenced. We have launched a new section of the community relations web pages for friendly guides to our forms. Again, in response to community feedback and leaders from ENGOs, we got a lot of feedback that it's hard to know what ECMC, as the regulatory authority, is asking of the entities we regulate. Our forms are, of course, publicly posted and available for anyone to see, but what do they mean? And so we've now launched what we're calling a friendly guide to forms that posts a sample form and describes in plain language what's being asked of operators. And so, I think, to state the obvious, encouraging plain language content reduces barriers for community members to understand the work that we do, and really emphasize the protective regulations that we put in place. So next slide, please. In addition to digital plain language, we're also working on what we call infographics, but basically one-sheeters that, again, in plain language, describe our work for community members. And so when we're tabling at all the events that you now see that we're trying to table at, what's a takeaway? So this is actually just a sample on your screen. It's absolutely still in draft. But I think we've now produced maybe a dozen of these single sheeters that are easy to hand out to community members at events. This one in particular has been a challenge, and yet all of our sister agencies, CDPHE, PUC, OPS, are glad that ECMC has taken the lead to develop this. So this particular infographic is describing in plain language who regulates what from oil and gas perspective, from extraction to gas station. So ECMC, as we all know, has nothing to do with regulating gas stations, but the general public wouldn't really know that. And so if they had a concern or a question, or were just curious about who regulates oil and gas when they're, filling up their tank, a quick Google search might not get them to the right bit of information. And so this is just another example of the ways in which we're trying to share what we do accurately, and likewise reduce misunderstanding and miscommunication. So next slide, please. Likewise, we have been really increasing our proactive digital comms messaging. So I'm sure that you all are, on the edge of your seats for the next edition of Carbon Copy. Carbon Copy is our new e-newsletter. Love the name. Shout out to our colleague Aubrey Cox for coming up with the name. We've done 4 editions it's monthly basically, so I think we're at like 7 editions, but for this reporting period, we've done 4. Likewise, we're very active on social media because we want to meet community members where they're at and where they're potentially obtaining information. So in this window of time, we did 46 social media posts. So on average, we're posting 2 times a week. And I think it's really important to note that all of this proactive digital comms has been proactively posted in 2 languages, English and Spanish. Incidentally, before this hearing, at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time and 4 p.m. EU time, I had a call with some social scientists in Italy who are doing community engagement work in Europe, and we were talking about language equity. And for them, it's just common practice, right? Because there's so many languages spoken in Europe. And so really proud to be implementing that here in Colorado too. Okay, so next slide. These are the stats. I won't dwell too much on this page, but similar to our website analytics, it's a little bit creepy how much we get to know about how you or anyone is engaging with our content. I think the short story or the message I like to convey with this page is that our engagement is really successful. People are reading our content, coming back to it a second time, coming back to it a third time. And the point of these proactive digital comms is to get folks to come back to our website, which is the hub of our comms. Next slide. So we just wanted to do a shout out to our colleague, Mr. Abdul El Najasi, our environmental protection specialist. From our standpoint, he's a bit famous. He had the most successful, popular Facebook post of all 46 posts that we did in that reporting period. what I'd like you to take away from this slide is that our posts are shared and seen by many more folks than just follow us. So in this case, we made a post on Facebook. We only have a few hundred followers on our Facebook account, but this particular post was viewed 5,000 times. And that's because of folks resharing. So we're really trying to highlight the human side, the people behind our work. Incidentally, I let Mr. El-Nadashi know that we were going to be highlighting him today, and he wanted to tune in, but he is an EPS and he is literally in the field doing inspections this morning. So you can all let him know that his ears should be burning. So next slide. Next step for digital comms, of course, continuous improvement. The whole point of having all these analytics is to make informed decisions and improving our content. Definitely adding more plain language, like I just said, using the analytics to adapt our content strategy and really focused on language equity and digital accessibility. Meanwhile, we just really want to focus on growing our reach, meaning the number of folks receiving our newsletter, the number of followers, and the number of folks who end up on our website. So we're nearing the end of this presentation, and it wouldn't be a presentation from the Community Relations Unit if we didn't talk about our press coverage. So in the reporting window of September to December, I'm aware that we had 87 direct media mentions. I'm sure that we might have missed some, so I think the number is actually higher than that. But that means, articles that explicitly referenced Energy and Carbon Management Commission or were explicitly about us. So of those 87 mentions, we had nearly 78 million impressions. So does that mean that 78 million people thoughtfully and thoroughly read each of these articles? No, of course not. So let me just explain what impressions means. Impressions are cumulative. So if we had 2 articles in the Denver Post, which of course we did, that number would be counted twice. And then impressions are self-reported by media outlets, and they really use it for their advertisers to, show reach. But, again, using the Denver Post example, the Denver Post reports that they have between 6 million and 7 million active readers in a given month, and they report 60 million page views from those users in a given month. So the point is, as we all know, press coverage really sets the tone and really influences public perception of our work. So, of course, media coverage matters. So on your screen are just some of the outlets who have covered ECMC, typically local, also national. I will share that my professional opinion and how I approach being a press officer for ECMC is that I treat all news outlets completely equitably. So local, national doesn't matter. And then next slide, this is the accessible version of the list of logos that you saw on the previous slide. So next up for strategic communications, really, our work is rooted in making accessible the facts, figures, and faces of ECMC. And I mean, of course, I love alliteration, so fact, figures, and faces. But importantly, using plain language best practices to demystify and make more understandable the data, the facts and figures of our work, and humanizing our work, the faces of ECMC. And then from what the substance of the content is, of course, it's entirely rooted in our mission change implementation, how we hold operators accountable, compliance, what actions we take if an operator is found to not be in compliance, enforcement, likewise focused on our energy transition regulatory work. Importantly, and like I mentioned, it's really a blessing that our unit is responsible for external comms and community engagement. So a core priority for us is promoting community programming and encouraging public participation. On a personal note, Commissioner Robbins, Chair Robbins, I was, really pleased to have the opportunity to work with you on 2 of our SMART Act presentations. And it was your idea to try to summarize in an understandable way pre and post Senate Bill 19181 explaining our mission change. And it was, really powerful, I think, the report we ended up putting together that makes understandable all of the data and all of the evidence-based work of the ways in which ECMC has implemented mission change. So with that, discussion and questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation and for the transparent illustration of how the community relations unit is doing. Just a few thoughts and comments. The Energy and Carbon Management Commission, which was previously the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission, has not previously done something like this. This is new. You guys are creating a new effort on the part of our agency with the community liaisons, with your work, Kristen. And I think it's really pivotal and important to the state of Colorado to sort of show folks that there are ways to engage with us. For a long time, I represented local governments before the commission, and that engagement was not easy, let's say. And I really appreciate the great work here to make that engagement more transparent, more visible, more the opportunities that exist from the work that you guys are doing are really incredible. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the great work that you did with SmartX slides. I've used them multiple times since then with other folks that I've spoken to. I think it really illustrates the Polis administration's work toward the energy protectiveness that we're doing and the continued energy development that we need for the state of Colorado. So I think it's a really nice balance. And I recognize the, I don't want to sort of call it the difficulty, but like the novelty of the work that you're doing. And I think that you guys are doing a stand-up job. So I really appreciate that. I hope that a lot of folks are listening in to understand what it is that the Energy and Carbon Management Commission is trying to do for the state of Colorado and this balance of energy development and protectiveness. So thank you. I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for the work. I do want to point out that all the analytics and the web page views and all that kind of stuff, that's totally entrancing to me, because that's not something I understand, but it's really, really cool. What you can figure out, people, how long they're on our web page, where they're coming from, all that kind of stuff. That's cool. And I think that will continue to inform the work as we move forward on how to do this work better. So Kristen, Stephen, Megan, really appreciate the presentation. And I don't want to dominate, but let other commissioners comment and or ask questions as well. Commissioner Oath.
Thanks, Chair Robbins. I think that was very well said. I just will add my own thanks to this team, both for all of the work, but also coming here today and showcasing the work, but also kind of really sharing all of the information and the tools that are available for folks. So I'm glad a number of folks are listening in and got to hear that. Would call out a couple, obviously each piece of work that you covered is very critical to the process. So, calling out a couple is not to dismiss any of the other pieces, but, just was reflecting on kind of your notes about the community outreach plans and the work that this team is doing to monitor compliance with those. And I think, I just was reflecting on how important that is, that this is a new tool really that, I think we are using, and how important it is for there to be continued communication from the operators to potentially impacted community members throughout the development process. And so making sure that that is a meaningful tool that is being utilized and complied with as it was intended to. So wanted to shout out to that. Appreciate the comments about, complaints and what does that mean, right? And so why are we encouraging complaints, right? It's about wanting to make sure that people know that they have a place to go if they have a concern or a question or observing something that they feel needs to be followed up on. And so thanks too for highlighting the variable length of time that a complaint may be open, right? That some may be followed up on and closed within 24 hours, and others take a fair amount of time because they're more technical in nature and more complex. So thanks for kind of noting that can be variable, and just also want to stress the importance of the step that you noted that there is a final communication back to the individual that kind of initiated the process or the action to begin with. It's important for folks to hear back from us on what was done with and in response to kind of what they saw or what they wanted to make sure that we were looking into. So thanks for that. And Stephen, I too am excited for the community meeting series to begin. I certainly do plan to join the one that's coming up here in a couple of weeks. So appreciate that as well. So thanks all.
Yeah, and on that note, hammer commissioners to show up at your community meetings. We all would love to do that. On an open meeting sort of thing, we can only have one show up, but there's 5 of us. So work with us to make sure that we can engage as well. So that looks great. Commissioner Ackerman, Messner, Cross, any other comments, questions? Commissioner Messner?
Yeah, I want to also share my appreciation for the depth and breadth of work that's being done by you all, particularly in the recent past, and the work that you've expressed in this presentation, I think shows that this has been a long time coming to be able to have a group that's willing to put something together like this as a package and really do the hard work of engaging with community. I think government in general is pretty terrible at telling its story. And I think you all are really showing how it is possible to engage with community, to tell the story, to ensure that people are understanding what's happening with ECMC, what's happening in their communities, and how they can engage with the processes. And also to make sure that they understand that their voices are actually being heard. It's one thing to have an avenue for someone to provide comment. It's another thing to actually have that comment be acknowledged and utilized in the decision making of an organization. And so, I think that you're setting up steps for that to happen. And I appreciate that. And I think it's up for us as an organization to show that we're actually listening to the community members and applying those things in our decision making so that they can see the results of these opportunities to engage with us. And I think that that's a thing that will be ongoing. And with that, for me, like one of the things that I highlighted there is that there's really only been one director's recommendation that incorporated feedback from the community liaisons. And so as we continue to have more and more of input in the director's recommendation from your community liaisons, from this group in general, I think it's really essential that we are painting a picture and telling a story in that director's recommendation so that commissioners do have, and the community in general who are reading those directors' recommendations, have an understanding of what the perspective of the community is, what comments were made by the community, and how the applicant has, ultimately listened and applied or modified their application to meet the comments that they were hearing from those community members. And I think that for me is really important as a commissioner to understand that perspective and not have it be super generic, but have it be specific, have it be so that I can understand really the perspective of the community and the steps that were taken to address the concerns that the community has raised, throughout the application process. So that would be my one comment as we continue to have those going forward in the director's recommendations. I really do think in general, the director's recommendation is essential to tell the story of the process of the application and the findings that got staff to where they were in whatever recommendation they're going to make. And I think the community liaison piece ends up being a really important part of that with the new rules. But thanks for everything that you've done. It's super exciting to see this work done. You're doing an incredible job, and so appreciate you all.
Commissioner Ackerman won by a hair.
Thank you. It's the same thing. Only gratitude to add. In a kind of an area where we're at, where no one single voice's recommendations are always adopted. Sometimes it can feel that government, that government has deaf ears, and so I really appreciate having worked with each of you individually, the absolute thought and care that you put into helping get not just our message across, but also the message of those with whom you interact across to us. And I feel like that's a very important two-way street. And the formation and work of this group really does demonstrate that the interest and the care that we have in understanding and working with the public to be able to work within our rules to implement oil and gas development and other forms of energy in a way that is conducive to the views of the preponderance of Coloradans. And so thank you very much for serving as that very important conduit. I think it will continue to be even more important going into the future. So I really appreciate your work as well.
Commissioner Cross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be brief. I also just want to say I think there's some really good stuff that we're seeing in the presentation. One thing that stuck out is, as Ms. Kemp noted, almost 1 million views on the website changes and stuff like that, and I think that's good. And generally what I've heard from people is like, yeah, we're still trying to fix some things, but I think it is much more user-friendly now. I find it much more user-friendly, and so kudos to that, and you're doing a great job. But I also just want to say thank you for a lot of the work that you put in. Some of the stuff mentioned, you talked about the 511 hearings, but between the work that the community relations unit does, as well as the hearings group to set up those meetings, the behind the scenes work to get it set up, I think is hugely important. Going to some of those events like the youth summit up in Weld County, everybody spends a lot of time getting the materials together, making sure they set it up, taking the time to be there to break it down afterwards. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's greatly appreciated. And then some of the stuff that's not talked about as well. I know specifically for me, Stephen and Jessica have been huge helps in trying to talk about the working groups that we're doing and trying to reach out to community members as well, and trying to say like, hey, let's try and set up a meeting. Can you be a part of this working group? Who would be a good person to be on this working group to get that environmental justice view as well? And so beyond what was just in the presentation, thank you for the work that goes into that as well. But overall, great stuff, and I'm truly appreciative.
Thank you, commissioners, for the comments. Kristen, anything to wrap up?
Oh, just thank you. And thank you for making the space and caring, right? Like this is all rooted in the fact that the cumulative impact rules got adopted in the first place. So thanks for your support, and lots more to come. You'll be hearing from us. So looking forward to more road trips and programs together.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. There's 49 people listening in. I assume that, this as well as all of our commission meetings are on YouTube, on our YouTube page. And, it might be helpful to remind folks that they can go back and watch this video to sort of see the transparent interactivity that's happening between the community relations unit and our stakeholders, so that people can kind of see this. I get a lot of questions about, well, how did you implement the community liaisons? Because this is new and different. No other state's done this. And I think, we're moving forward in a really proactive fashion on that front. So thanks so much for the presentation. Thanks for putting it together. Thanks for the continued best efforts, and keep commissioners involved in the work that you're doing. Really appreciate it. Commissioners, short and powerful, as I started out at the beginning, and it was. So thank you very much. It's kind of like watching the Winter Olympics short track program or something like that. But thanks, everybody. I would move to adjourn because we don't have any other meetings ahead of us at this point in time. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.